Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Cadence Independent Media production. Today we are exploring the most resonant possible tom tuning. Before we go any further, I want you to listen to two tunings of these toms today. These are different, somewhat drastically, but which one sounds the most resonant to you? One of the tunings is unison, both top and bottom head tuned to the same pitch, and the other, the top and bottom head, are tuned to different pitches. And not just that, but the interval between the two heads on the rack tom is not the same as the interval on the floor tom. So to your ear, is one of these more resonant than the other? Is it a bigger sound than the other? Is there a most resonant version here? Leave us a comment below right now. Pause. Go do it right now. Okay, did you do it? This isn't a contest. This is not about being part of any club or anything like that. But we want to know because this is a really divisive subject, and resonant is also one of those words where not everybody even means the same thing when they say it. All right, spoiler alert, here we go. First example, the rack tom, the heads were tuned to different pitches, the floor tom different pitches as well. It was a half step higher on the Reso for the rack tom and a perfect fifth higher for the Reso on the floor. The second example was the unison tuning, tuned to the exact same pitch, checked them, exactly the same, done. Now take a moment. Does this line up with what you were expecting? Is this different than what you heard? Were you able to tell that one of them was unison and the other wasn't? Were you surprised? Now, to the meat of the subject here. If there's one tuning that we see in the comments more than any other as either absolutely you always have to do it or absolutely you can never ever do it, it's unison tuning on toms. Not sure why this is such a big deal to people, but it seems to be a hill that an awful lot of people want to die on one way or the other. And they tend to either say that it's the most resonant or that it's the least resonant. It can't be both. So we decided to just go with the most resonant unison note that we could find on these two toms, just see how boomy we could get these drums at a unison, and then see if just following our ears here, we could get a bigger sound than that just by making some small adjustments. One of the things that drives us super crazy here is people who say you have to do things one way or you're wrong. Here's the big problem with that. These drums at these intervals in this room on this day with this person playing and with those sticks sounds like this. That's a unique situation. They might actually be different tomorrow if the temperature is different in here. So we can't say that unison is good or bad as a concept. We can't say that non-unison is better or worse as a concept because every drum is different, every room is different, every set of heads is microscopically different. So that means that we can't think in terms of these absolutes anymore, and we have to start using our ears and stop fighting for dogma that doesn't matter. Not to be an absolute broken record, but this is exactly why Generally speaking, we don't give out pitches of either of the heads or the drums. We don't use drum dials. We don't use tune bots. We don't have any settings, because that information, as it relates to you, the viewer, making this sound at home, is completely meaningless. The fact of the matter is, using our end result as a starting point is not going to get you anything. What you need to do is find your own starting point that makes you happy with the drum you have, and then learn to deviate from that, because deviating from our norm is simply impossible for where you are with your drums and with you hitting them. Now that we've established that our philosophy here, as it always has been, is about the journey more so than the destination, let's talk about the journey. When you sit down with one of your drums, start with unison tuning, because it's pretty easy to generate in terms of tunings. We're tuning both of the heads to the same pitch. We don't have to think about any other intervals. Find a unison tuning that sounds good to you. It's not about it being maximum resonant or anything like that. Just, I hit it, it's a pleasing sound. If that feels like a lot to start with the batter head alone and the Reso off. Get it to where it's feeling good and you like the pitch that it's occupying, and then put the Reso on and try to match it to the first one. Once we have this as a starting point, which is literally what we did with these drums today, start to make little adjustments to just one of the heads. Raise up the Reso a little bit, or lower the batter a little bit, and listen to what happens. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Are we starting to hear that the batter is too loose now, and maybe we should go the other way and raise the Reso instead of lowering the batter? All of these things are going to show us the nuance of the drum that's actually in front of you, and help you to find an even better sound than the unison might be. Sounds like a drum, broken record moment number 2. Make really small adjustments and listen a lot in between every single adjustment. If you make dramatic adjustments and miss out on the nuance in between, both in terms of what the drum's giving you and training your ear, then we're not really doing the journey. We're trying to skip to the end, and we need to not be the hare here. We need to be the tortoise. We need to go slow and pay super close attention to what each little change is doing, because once we get something that makes us happy, if we can identify what we did, then we can make it again. If you spend any time on the internet at all looking at drum stuff, which surely you have because you're here, then you've seen that there are hundreds and hundreds of people on there who are happy to give you a prescription for not just a sound that they're using, but maybe your favorite drummer's sound or their favorite tuning or whatever prescription they might use, as if they only ever use that prescription, no matter the rest of all of these variables. If you take a professional drummer at work with their instrument doing a gig, and you think for 1 second that if their prescribed tuning sounds bad in that room, that they're not going to change that, then you're wrong. They're a professional. They're about getting a good sound, not about being slavish to the idea that their toms should have a minor third interval between the heads. No professional drummer I know has any interest in being fixated on a thing like that. What they will do is set up their drums ahead of time to what they expect to work under the circumstances, and then make adjustments as necessary, either them or their tech or whoever's in charge of adjusting those things. Here at the channel, we've had a lot of opportunities in the past to work with really great drum builders, especially some smaller, up-and-coming, super innovative drum builders, and that includes a company called WTS Drums. These drums are designed with a cable tuning system where both of the heads are tensioned to the same tension at the same time with one tuning key. So on the one hand, both the heads are always tuned to the same tension, but on the other hand, you can change the tuning super fast and move from super low to bebop in a fraction of a second. The big thing that came up when we started working with them and making videos and talking about it is that people were really terrified of the idea of not being able to have a different interval between the two heads. And the thing that was really curious about it was, as we were using them, making demos, practicing, doing different stuff, I never wanted for the opportunity to change just one of the heads. I found that the drums in this case, sounded great through the entire tuning range, even though I knew perfectly well that both of the heads were at the same tension. So this is a case where if you don't know that that's not available, then it doesn't matter. It's the drum sounds good. So if that's what we're after, if we're after a good sound, then getting hung up on that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And incidentally, those drums were insanely resonant at unison tuning all the time. So there's a time and place for everything, but getting hung up on the details, not so much. For those of you that came here looking for the most resonant tom tuning, we have some pretty resonant toms here, and some of these tunings are more resonant in the room than others. That's a rabbit hole to go down that's worth going down for understanding your drums, but as you move to more and more and more resonance, there are some pitfalls that we definitely ran into today. For instance, when we tuned the tom to a different interval and not a unison, it really set off the wires on the snare drum, something crazy, and that might have been a time where I would have chosen to go with the first tuning on the rack tom just to eliminate that. And then on the other hand, when I started working on the floor tom, we initially had it at a perfect fourth between the heads. The bass drum was making it ring like crazy. It was bleeding into all of the mics. So I had to make some adjustments to get that crosstalk to stop. These are the sorts of things that take us maybe a little bit away from the idea that we need to have as much resonance as humanly possible, and start to think more about the space you're in. Start to think about the music that you're making. Start to think about how much of that you actually need. There are some times where a ton of resonance can be problematic. So don't forget that the journey, the experience of the journey, gives us not just a super resonant result, but also all of the steps along the way that are also usable in other situations where the maximum is maybe excessive. All right, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed our insanely resonant toms today. I definitely did. Please follow the link below to the Patreon. It's the best way to help us continue to make these videos and answer all the possible questions that there are out there about how to get a great sound out of these instruments. Please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And lastly, tell us resonant tom stories, whether they were too resonant or not resonant enough, and if you found a way to fix it.